Hey guys, my name is JC and welcome to today's gameplay video. For today's game, we're going to be playing Maelstrom Wanderer. This is a big mana, big value deck that's looking to ramp hard and put into play some of the biggest, baddest creatures that Temur has to offer. If you enjoy the deck, go check out the channel where you can find a deck tech discussing all of the cards that have been included, as well as the overall strategy. Otherwise, let's get to the game. Alright, so looking at our opening hand, we have two pieces of 2 mana ramp, we have a 4-drop, and 2 lands. So this is pretty much the ideal opening hand for the deck, so let's definitely keep this one. Alright, looks like our opponent just plays a land for turn, tapped, and passes it over. And so it looks like the Child of Alara player does the same thing, just playing a tapped land and passing. Alright, and the Elesh Norn player goes into a land and plays an Authority of the Consoles. That's actually a card we really don't like to see in this deck because we really sort of rely on the haste being able to swing in and hit our opponents on turn, so that may be a little bit of a problem. Okay, so we draw into a Sarkhan's Unsealing, so judging by what we've got in our hand, we've got quite a bit of red mana, so I think we will play the Verdict Catacombs and go find ourselves a Stomping Ground and put that into play tapped, and then we'll just pass it over. Alright, so the Volrath player just plays a Bajuka Bog, targeting us, seeing as we're really the only ones that have anything in our graveyard. Which graveyard effects for our deck is generally fine. We don't tend to get too worried about it too much. We really only have one piece of graveyard recursion in the deck, so... And that seems to be all that the Volrath player wants to do for turn. The Child of Alara player puts a command tower into a Summer Bloom. Oh, I do love that card. I don't get to play it very often, but that is great. Let's see if they actually get the 3 additional lands down from this. Okay, so we see 1, 2... Oh, and a Temple of the False Gods for mana ramp. That's awesome. I mean, it's not great for us, but I love to see little niche cards like that actually go off and do their thing. So good on you, Child of Alara player. That is awesome. Elesh Norn player, not so much good on you. Bad Elesh Norn player for playing Authority of the Consoles, ruining our plans. Alright, so the Elesh Norn player plays a land into a Mana Vault. Oops, so they're getting some fast ramp there to get into the big bad Praetor. Okay, and form onto a Smother and Tithe. Okay, the Elesh Norn player is not messing around here. Definitely playing some cards we don't want to see, because I like to play responsibly around Smother and Tithe, but this deck is very much ramp hard into what we need to do, and we probably can't afford to waste too much time paying that there. So unfortunately, we are going to be feeding the Elesh Norn player. This brings up a really good point, whether you should always pay for cards like Rhystic Study and Smother and Tithe. As a general rule, yes, you should try to, but only because it's helping you win by preventing your opponent from getting too far ahead. If you avoid pain, but know more often than not that it's going to put you in a winning position, don't be afraid to dodge your taxes. Just do so responsibly. And we draw into a Sylvan Library, so we won't be paying. I think we'll tap to cast into the north. We definitely don't want to play too many of these mana dorks into what's going on over here. So this one here, I think we're going to grab ourselves a snow-covered island, just to make sure we have our colors fixed, and then we can pass it over to our opponents. So the Volrath player doesn't pay either, and just plays a land. And we see an Astral Cornucopia come down. So I don't think an Elesh Norn is going to be too far off into our future here. Now the Child of Alara player has gotten a lot of lands down, so it'll be interesting to see if they actually do want to pay or not. And it looks like they actually do. Very responsible of them. And we see a Rites of Flourishing come down. So that's sort of bittersweet for us. We definitely want to be ramping out faster, but I don't know how much that's going to help the Elesh Norn player along, depending on what else they play with it, but we'll take it at the moment. Our Sylvan Library is definitely going to help us draw into the extra land, so we'll be getting that down next turn most likely. Right, so Elesh Norn just plays a land. And into a Mana Crypt. Oh, so we're definitely seeing a lot of fast mana coming out. So now we're definitely looking and an Elesh Norn, but no, they're actually going to cast a Mentor of the Meek. Okay. And if they have a Mentor of the Meek, it could be possible that they're running a lot of low drops, perhaps taxi, staxy type creatures, which we may see coming down here. Hero of Bladehold. Okay, so it might be more of a go wide deck, which definitely gets a little bit of help from Elesh Norn's buffs. So for us here, we're really hoping to draw into a land next turn. That's what we really want to see. And we do see it, thankfully. That's a good draw off the top. So unfortunately, we're going to be that irresponsible player and not pay again. Okay, and we draw into a Rampant Growth off of the Rites of Flourishing trigger, which is good. Unfortunately, these extra draws are definitely feeding into the Smothering Tithe more and more. Alright, so I think here we'll get down the Snow-Covered Forest. And we're just going to ramp further. And I think what we'll do here is we'll grab a mountain and a forest, just to further help our need for red mana. And we'll just ship the turn off here. Another option could have been to play the Sylvan Library. That way, if we had 2 lands on top, we could have played them with the Rites of Flourishing. Okay, so the Volrath player doesn't pay for Smothering Tithe and just puts down a land. And we see Volrath the Shapestealer come down. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a -1 counter on up to 1 target creature and pain 1 until your next turn. Volrath the Shapestealer becomes a copy of target creature with a counter on it, except it's 7/5 and it has this ability. Also, we see a Dimir Aqueduct come down, and that seems to be it for their turn. One big saving grace we do have is the Sarkhan's Unsealing in our hand, and it's a card that you'll frequently hear me say it when I'm playing this deck, and that it comes in clutch a lot of times for situations where the board state, particularly with creatures, starts to get crazy. If we manage to get that Sarkhan's Unsealing down and cast 1 to 2 of our creatures, we can usually clear the entire board of our opponent's stuff. Alright, so we see the Wooburg mana come into play, so here we see Child of Alara. Now if we're really lucky, we can actually get our opponent to do the job for us, and the Child of Alara player can actually get rid of the entire board state, which they may very well want to do with the potential of 2 Elesh Norns being on board. And then that way that just saves us having to put in the extra work to get that Sarkhan's Unsealing happening. Now what'll be interesting to see for us is whether the Elesh Norn player does send their creatures over our way, or they see the other opponents as a bit more of a threat at the moment. So far we've only been ramping, and whereas we normally do get ahead of our opponents in ramp, particularly with lands, where we're not actually that far ahead of the rest of our opponents in regards to total mana, so hopefully we might be able to fly under the radar here a little bit. And it looks like, yep, the Elesh Norn player is actually spreading it out amongst our 2 other opponents, which is good to see. Preserves our life total a little bit to be able to use on Sylvan Library. And that's one of the really big strengths of playing these big mana decks. Unless you get really far ahead mana-wise, you tend to fly under the radar sometimes. And so the Hero of Bladehold spits out 2 tokens, and a Mentor of the Meek trigger coming down. So we can see the synergy there with Mentor of the Week and Hero of Bladehold, which is going to be really good for the Elesh Norn player to actually keep their hands nice and full. Not that the Rites of Flourishing isn't sort of helping us all along with that anyway. And now the Battle Cry also buffing up those soldiers. So as we can see, the soldiers becoming 2/1s. Okay, so they play a land in their second main phase. 5 cards in hand, access to 10 mana, so they can still do quite a lot here. Okay, and we see a Heliod, God of the Sun, come down. Other creatures have Vigilance and being able to spit out 2/1 white Cleric Enchantment creature tokens. So with everything coming down now, I think the Child of Alara player is going to be pretty tempted to wipe the board here, but they'll will need a sack outlet or some way of destroying it, so we'll have to see if that's the case. So we draw another ramp spell for turn. So we won't pay again. And we draw a Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. Okay, so that's something to think about in the future, considering it's one of our alternate win cons. So we won't pay for this trigger either. So having the ability to activate it for 11 once we get some creatures down, we can actually reduce everyone's life totals down enough that we can hopefully alpha swing in even something like our Drakaseth being able to spit damage, may be able to finish opponents off. But what do we want to do here now? So we could just ramp out, cast Circuitous Route, get 2 lands into play tapped, and then play a Talisman of Curiosity, or we could also ramp out and get Sylvan Library down. At the moment, I think we probably want to get the Sylvan Library down after we ramped as well, because we'll potentially be able to cast Maelstrom Wanderer next turn and we can fix the top of our library a little bit. So I think that may be the best play. So we'll start with that. Mana wise, I think we're going to need to get down another mountain just to be able to play for our Drakaseth when the time comes, and we'll get another forest into play. And then we'll just finish it off with that Sylvan Library. And then we will pass the turn at that. Okay, so we see a Field of the Dead come down. That's definitely a card that we need to keep in mind going forward, because that'll definitely be able to make some chump blockers for our big beefy boys until we actually get some form of evasion down or even trample. Alright, I'm just putting a -1 counter on Mentor of the Meek, making that Mentor just a little bit meeker. Alright, so they've moved to combat. Are they going to swing in? No, they've decided to keep Volrath back. And it looks like they just leave it there, leaving some mana up. Now that we've moved to the Child of Alara's turn, I'm really hoping that they have a sacrifice outlet here. Because if they do, that's potentially going to put us very, very far ahead. Infernal Offering. Choose an opponent. You and that player each sack a creature. Each player who sacks a creature this way draws 2 cards. Choose an opponent, return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then that player returns a creature card from their graveyard to the battlefield. Alright, so it looks like the Elesh Norn player wants to respond here. And they're making a 2/1 white cleric. Oh, and it looks like we have the Volrath player casting Overnize. Spell I've never seen before. Until end of turn, target creature loses all abilities and has base power and toughness 0/1. Targeting the Heliod, so they definitely want to stop them from making tokens here, it seems, but they're just going to activate over the top, as we see they are right now. Okay, and now we have another response, so we have a Heroic Intervention. Okay. Well, this stack's getting quite big. We are completely okay with that. The only thing we're going to lose in the exchange is the Sylvan Library, but that's more than a better price to pay for everything that's happening over the Elesh Norn side. And so it looks like the Elesh Norn players just drawing a few more cards to get some benefit off of all the treasure tokens they have there. And this Infernal Offering looks like it's going to resolve. Alright, and looks like we have some Smother and Tithe triggers go onto the stack, so that'll give a few more treasures to Elesh Norn. And here we actually see the Volrath player paying for some of those Smother and Tithe triggers, so they really don't want them to be able to activate, make any more clerics, and draw any more cards off the Mentor of the Meek. And we say an unfortunate goodbye to our Sylvan Library. And that board state certainly looks a lot different over on the mono white player's side. Now what'll be interesting to see here is if the Elesh Norn player can actually rebuild after that. I mean, they've got 6 cards in hand, but it really depends on what those cards are. Oh, so our opponent casts Endless Horizons. That is a card I have not seen cast in quite a while. And with our opponent getting down Endless Horizons, it means that they're going to be able to make a land drop every turn. Okay, so we draw a Karplusan Forest for turn. And a Lurking Predators. Okay. So our choices for this turn. We certainly have enough mana to just be able to cast the Maelstrom Wanderer, which is never a bad thing, but we do also have the potential we could just cast Lurking Predators and also ramp a little bit further, even possibly get down our Talisman, Elysian Caryatid, or Rampant Growth. So Lurking Predators is good, but to be honest, while we can, I'd like to get a little bit of damage in, so I think we'll just go for the Wanderer here. Now, we won't play the land for turn in case we do run into one of our cards that actually cares about lands entering the battlefield, so let's do what we came here to do, and let's get the Wanderer down. Okay, Cascade Party begins. Let's hope we get some good hits. Okay, so we hit a Cultivate, which isn't necessarily the best, so for this one here, we're going to go for 2 forests. Okay, a second trigger, Turn Timber Symbiosis. Okay, that's something a little bit better. We can actually have a little bit of a choice in what we get here, and surprisingly the only one is Balefire Dragon, but it is a good one. So let's get that down straight away. Okay, so I think here we'll just play our Karplusan Forest for turn. Let's move to combat, and we're definitely going to be going for the Child of Alara player here. They just have the answer to our shenanigans, and we cannot let them stop those shenanigans from happening. We came here to cascade into big things, and by God, that's what we're going to do. And we will leave the turn at that. Alright, so discard wise here, we're in a pretty good place with mana at the moment, so I think I'm happy to actually shift the Elysian Caryatid and the Talisman of Curiosity. And even though we did get into one ramp piece with the Maelstrom Wanderer Cascade, we're actually in a really great place because if the board gets wiped again, we can just simply recast Maelstrom Wanderer, get it back down again, and just hit the Child of Alara player until we can hopefully get them out of the game. This is what makes the Maelstrom Wanderer so resilient. Cast it, cascade into hasty threats, and when they board wipe, recast to cascade into more threats. Alright, so land enters, Field of the Dead triggers. They will get their zombie. Okay, our opponent looks like they're tapping out for something big here. Hope it's nothing too scary for us. A Fractal Harness for X equals 7. When it enters the battlefield, create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. Put 7 1/1 counters on it. When equipped, a creature attacks, double the number of 1/1 counters on it. I like it very much. Like it very much. That isn't actually a card that I've seen played since the set came out for it. But again, really glad to see these obscure cards that you don't get to see too often actually being played. And that looks like that's it for the Volrath player's turn. Okay, Tatiova. Benthic Druid comes down. So that's definitely going to make use of those additional land drops for turn. And they do play a land. And they cast an Enter the Unknown. Target creature you control explores, and you may play an additional land this turn. So definitely a lot of additional land plays in their deck. And it makes sense when you're casting a commander that you want to sacrifice all the time, you definitely need to have the mana available to do that. So at the moment, seeing them not get down a Child of Alara is really good for us, because we're setting ourselves up to get the Shaman of the Forgotten Ways activation to basically kill our opponents pretty quickly, especially if we can also land Drakaseth as well. So everything's going according to plan at the moment. Let's just hope that Elesh Norn has no surprises for us. No Authority of the Console type cards that really mess with our game plan. Endless Horizon triggers. Okay, and the Elesh Norn player casts the Knight of the White Orchid, so that'll definitely help them catch up. And a really great card in the current meta where green players run rampant, getting a lot of extra lands out, makes those cards a lot more powerful. And it looks like they leave the turn there. Okay, so what are we going to be doing for our turn? So we draw a Ranger's Path, so some more ramp. And a Selvalar's Stampede. Okay. If we were to cast the Selvalar's Stampede, we would be able to put into play the Lurking Predators, probably the Drakaseth. This is just assuming that our opponents are going to be choosing free, so that we don't get any additional card advantage by not having to use the cards in our hand. So, yep, I think the play is definitely a start by casting Selvalar's Stampede. So we'll tap that and we'll use a red here, and we'll cast Selvalar's Stampede. And let's see what our opponents do. It's the thing I always love about resolving this card, the psychology of it. Do you pick wild? Do you pick free? And especially with opponents like this that don't actually know the deck, they may not actually know whether it's better to choose wild or free in this particular instance. So, all right, so we are choosing wild. Okay, so it looks like 2 of our opponents have picked wild and 1 has picked free. So in that particular case, having an Uro, a Prime Speaker Zagana, and a Hullbreaker Horror enter the battlefield, I think we'll definitely get down Drakaseth. I've just got to say, in this kind of big mana, big permanence deck, I love Selvalar's Stampede. From that 6 mana investment, we put over 25 mana worth of permanence into play, refilled our hand, and put a land into play. If you have a similar kind of big mana deck that runs a lot of high mana value permanence, you should definitely consider it. And let's begin with putting our Uro triggers on the stack first so we can actually draw the cards off Prime Speaker Zagana. So we're going to draw quite a large amount of cards here, especially with Beanstalk Giant coming down. Currently being a 10-10, so we're going to draw 11 cards there. Okay, I got a little excited here. It was only 8 cards instead of 10. Uro goes away for now. And yes, we would most certainly like to put a land card onto the battlefield, so we will put this Rejuvenate in Springs down. Okay, so that board state has changed very, very quickly there. Now, we'll have a quick look at what we've got in our hands. Pathbreaker Ibex, that could actually end the game quickly. We're only on 5 mana though, so that's not possible. Well, actually, if we cast Orcish Lumberjack, sack one of our forests, that may do it. Now, we are playing into a white player with open mana, and we also have some blue mana open here. So we may not be able to resolve it, but I think that may be the best play. Looking at what else we've got there. We can also get Old Gnawbone down if we also get Orcish Lumberjack down to make a lot of mana. Can that finish us the game though? Can get us pretty close. So we'll start by casting the Orcish Lumberjack. And I think we'll bounce the Fractal token here. Okay, and so it looks like we have the Volrath player scooping after that, so they've definitely seen enough of what we're doing over here. Which I can understand. Usually when you start facing a board state like this, you pretty much think that it's game over. Okay, so we'll tap down, tap, sack a forest, and get down our Pathbreaker Ibex. And if this resolves, that'll probably be it for our opponents. So we will bounce the Tachi over in this particular case. Okay, and that's another scoop there. So that's probably the end of the game now. The Elesh Norn player, unless they have something in their hand, there's going to be more than enough damage to get everything done. So I think from here we'll move to combat. Okay, so the Elesh Norn does have a Swords to Plowshares targeting the Pathbreaker Ibex, which that's okay. We're still going to be getting a lot of damage in here. Okay, so we have no reason not to attack with everything. Okay, so our first Rakaseth trigger will put the 4 damage to their face, 3 damage there, and just for the fun of it, we'll put 3 damage there. Now I haven't done the maths on this, but it's going to be quite a lot. It's probably not going to be enough to kill them, but there's not going to be a lot that they're going to be able to do after this. I mean, even if they board wipe, we've definitely got enough cards in hand to be able to replay things back down. And yep, that's it from our opponents. So time to go to the game review. So overall, everything pretty much went the way we wanted. We were able to ramp early and consistently without any interruption from our opponents. And even though the Elesh Norn player had a great early to mid game, the Child of Alara player wiping the board actually ended up setting us back the least and ended up helping us the most. Out of the frying pan and into the fire, but such is Commander. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's game. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.